Mate Dodik reached the semifinals in the last video here in Monastir. And it was to be a perfect week for him. The semifinal against Switzerland's Brunold was very close, but Mate managed to come out on top. Here are a few points from the semifinals. In the final, he won in 3 sets against the young Italian Cina, which meant he won his first future in 2024. As he had a few minor physical problems, we decided to skip the 3rd week to give his body time to recover. It was also time for me to travel back to Vienna. My partner Ivan was taking over the 3rd week here in Monastir. Back in Vienna, I had 2 more practice days with Yuri Rodionov before he set off on his trip to the USA to compete in the qualifying in Indian Wells. The coming weeks will be interesting for Yuri. It was time to take the next step, and this will also take him out of his comfort zone. It is important to find a balance between the feeling he needs to always be ready to compete and, on the other hand, not to lose sight of his long-term development. Long-term development, of course, requires a willingness to work on things he doesn't feel comfortable with, and that's where his personality comes into play. Yuri is now also ready to work on his personal development, and that is certainly a challenge. With Slava Bielinski, we were also able to welcome a new player to our team. He comes from Ukraine and is ranked around 500 in the ATP rankings. He had very traumatic experiences growing up in Donetsk, where the armed conflict started back in 2014. I hope we can provide him with the best possible support in the near future. Slava will be competing in future tournaments in Croatia from next week on. These tournaments also have a long tradition. Sebastian Sorger played another future this week in Monastir. Unfortunately, it didn't work out as we had hoped. He lost in 3 sets in the first round. The defeat itself is part of the business. However, Sebastian was only partly able to transfer some of his skills into the match. And that's not enough in these tournaments. The reason for that is not yet fully clear to us. We will also resolve this issue, even if patience is not always Sebastian's strongest point. Once again, the last trip confirmed how many close matches there are. This makes it all the more important to be present in the deciding situations. Confidence in your own shots is important, but the determination to take control in important situations is just as essential. But that's easier said than done. If a player fails, it would, of course, be important to find out why. In my experience, many players are unable to describe their emotions at that moment, and that makes it difficult. So the first step for players is to learn to classify their emotions and also to come to terms with it when it's fear. Therefore, as always, honesty and trust are important factors. In a player-coach relationship, it can hardly get boring. But this is also very often presented firsthand on TV. That's it for this time. I hope to see you next week.